Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. We're delighted you're with us today. And Nathan is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota at GCN. I'm Vincent Finelli. And if you'd like to call us, we'll pay for the call. 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. We broadcast 2 hours from the Missouri Ozark Mountains. Rich Scheben's with us, offgridmontana.com. Welcome, Rich Scheben. Yeah, Rich. Hey, Rich, are you there? You know what? I don't hear Rich Scheben. I really don't. How about now? Hey, Rich, you there?
Can you hear me, Vince?
I can now.
Okay,
Yeah.
I have no idea what happened.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad you're here. Hey, by the way, I heard this video on was one of those videos on Netflix, and they were describing. Yeah, he's the last guy to have a telephone answering machine, and that was one of the lines. And I was thinking about you and me. Because we have similar telephone answering machines on landlines. And I guess that's kind of rare for someone to have a telephone answering machine. You know, like in the kitchen, right? Or the room where you spend some time, where you walk by it. You know, pretty often you can see that blinking light to tell you that you've got a message, or the blinking digital display that says, you know, you've got one message, 2, 3, 4. But, when I heard that, it gave me pause, because I was thinking, I think it's really right, because there are people who just, that's a technology that's dying. Who buys the kind of phones where you have an answering machine? Because most people just carry their phones with them, so they take the calls, pretty much whenever, right?
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, with all the things I'm reading, from 5G to radio frequency waves, I'm really glad I use cell phones very, very infrequently. And I had issues, and we talked about this privately, Vince. I had issues where people from around the country, even the world, was trying to contact me, and they couldn't leave a message. And I'm not going to say it's conspiracy theory that my little local phone company has something to do with it, but I was using their answering machine device. And recently I started using this device that you were just talking about. And I notice I'm getting a lot less people trying to reach me, because somebody knows that if they leave a message, it's going to be on my device. It's going to be hardwired in there, and I'll have proof of whomever's trying to reach me for whatever reason. So, when you're in the new media, or the alternative media, like we are, and we say things for the benefit of the little people, the about 93%, which is the manufactured perception that the mainstream media wants to give, but their actions show 100% against that. In other words, they're more for the aristocracy managing the serfs, which I talk about on a regular basis. So anyway, long story short, I prefer this. Unfortunately, this phone, I don't know why the first few seconds I couldn't get through. Who knows? But, when I'm not talking, especially on commercials, I'll put it on mute. And I noticed it wasn't on mute, so I hit it a couple times and finally got to talk. You got to hear me. But the only complaint I have about this phone is that it's so little in my hand. It's sometimes I accidentally press a button when I'm not supposed to because it's it's a very small contraption or device. But that's the only complaint I really have. But other than that, I enjoy it. It's wireless, so I can walk around my cabin, kick some wild turkeys off my porch, tell my dogs to stop barking, whatever it is, and do chores while I'm on the air, whether it be throw a piece of firewood in the wood stove or whatever needs to be done. But,
Yeah. I remember when we used to talk months ago. He would say, hey, "Can you hold on? I got to put some wood in the stove." And but now you can do it. You just put the phone down near where you are and continue on with your chores. Yeah,
absolutely. I put it on speaker, so I don't even have to be.
Mm-hmm.
I could be a few feet away and still hear what you're saying, or when the commercial's over, and then I can come back to picking the phone up for being on the air. Absolutely, I enjoy it.
Class, what we're talking about is AT&T sells it's a cordless telephone, and if you go to eBay, you can get one that's refurbished, and it can come with 2 or 3 handsets, and it comes with a base that has a speakerphone, and I think it's available shipped without tax if you get it from outside of your state for less than $30. Is that right, Rich?
Yeah, it might have been in the 30s. I'm not sure, but here in Montana we don't have a state sales tax, so to buy a couple of phones for that price compared to where you can't even get a month's worth of service on your cell phone for that much, and then you got to deal with the health issues. You got to deal with everything that's said or text. Big Brother's picking up through Facebook or Google or whomever, and it's so worth it. You can't even buy lunch for $30-something bucks today.
Yeah. You mentioned aristocracy versus the serfs. I wanted to share a story with you. So I was sitting in the kitchen with our son, and we were talking about things that we need to get for the farm, supplies, getting ready for hay season, and equipment and belts and bearings and greases and all the things that we need to make sure our equipment is field ready. So we're in the process of that right now. Hydraulic pumps, all kinds of things. And he said, "Hey, Dad, there's a sale on diesel engine oil at the farm supply about 20 miles away. It's called Orscheln." I said, "Okay, so how much is it?" And he said, $10.99 a gallon for Delvac. It's a mobile product. We like this particular diesel engine oil, Delvac. And we use it in our tractors, our diesel tractors, and even our gasoline-powered farm equipment. So he said, "But you know what? Let's check Walmart. Let's see how much it is there." So it was 3 cents less expensive. Now, normally this is $15 a gallon. So it was $10.97 at Walmart. And then on the screen it says, if you spend over $35, you get free shipping. Now, I'm still talking about the aristocracy versus the serfs, and I'll tie this all together in just a few seconds. So we said, "What else do they have?" He said, "Well, Dad, let's look at the clearance section." So we click on the clearance section on the internet, okay, at Walmart, walmart.com. And they've got some coffee filters for $1.79 for the brown ones, the unbleached Melita brand, top-of-the-line coffee filters, 200 of them for $1.79. Let's get a couple of those, okay? Let's get 6 gallons of diesel engine oil. Let's get 6 more. Let's get 6 more than that. No, let's get 4 more than that. So we got 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 4. And then, you know what? We need a fuel filter for the Jeep. Let's see how much that is. Wow, that's less than AutoZone, way less. Let's get that. Oh, shower curtains. They have cloth or fabric shower curtains for less than $10. Let's get one of those. Okay, so the total bill for 400 coffee filters, unbleached, diesel engine oil, 6 gallons plus 6 gallons plus 6 gallons plus a shower curtain plus 4 more gallons of diesel engine oil plus an oil filter. Total bill, $201.15. Shipping included. So I thought, wow, what would it cost me to ship this to the next post office? From our post office in Missouri to the next one, the closest one over, 11 miles away. It was like $70. $70 to ship this. So if you look at $70 shipping on a $200 bill, how can they do that? And we're not talking about something that's light to ship, okay? We're talking about 20 gallons of diesel engine oil, which weighs about 8 pounds per gallon. That's without the box, and that's without the plastic jug that it's in. So let's say 9 pounds per gallon, and we got 20 gallons. 180 pounds? 180 pounds. So they're shipping 180 pounds. From where? Well, some of it's coming from Missouri, and some of the oil's coming from California. And they're shipping all of this, and built into the price, it is the same or less than if I went to Walmart to get it. But here's the thing. The tax in our neck of the woods, I believe, is like 5.75% sales tax. If I go to the local Walmart, it's 8.1% sales tax. So the shipping it, I'm paying less sales tax. And of course, on the fuel filter and the oil, I get all that back anyway because it's farm use. I just pay it up front and I just report it as a deduction. What I'm saying is, you talk about the aristocracy versus the serfs. The local guy who sells engine oil, oil filters, coffee filters, can't possibly compete with this arrangement that Walmart.com has. Impossible. How is it possible to ship? The coffee filters are $1.79 for 200 of them. How is it possible to find somebody, to employ somebody, pay them benefits, say, okay, put this in a box and ship? Where's it? It's coming in a box all by itself from California. Shipping included for two times $1.79. The little guy is done. There's no way. There's no way. If a customer is interested in price and convenience, there's no way you can compete with this system. Let's talk a little bit more about that when we come back. It's a true story. This is happening to me right now. Rich Sheben's with us, offgridmontana.com. Truck driver Jay is in North Carolina. I've gotten calls from truck driver Jay from Arizona, California, Texas, Missouri. Now it's North Carolina. I guess you're on the road, right, Jay?
Actually, I'm waiting to get loaded. Now, you were talking about the diesel, $15 a gallon?
Yeah, that's the retail price for diesel engine oil, yes. Mm-hmm. Or diesel motor oil, as it sometimes is called.
Oh, motor oil. Okay, I thought you were talking about diesel fuel. Oh, okay.
No, we're not. We're not there yet. We're working on it. Jeez, can you imagine? Well, it may go that way. If we keep using up our reserves, maybe in. Well, probably not in our lifetime, but it could hit $15 a gallon. Yeah, no, we're not there yet. Yeah, the price of diesel around our neck of the woods is $259.9 at a low, and it maxes out around $289.9 for the price gougers in our neck of the woods. How much is it where you are?
The last I checked was $304.
Yeah, Missouri has some of the lowest state taxes on motor fuels in the country. One of the lowest. It's not the bottom, but yeah, there's some states that are, there's two taxes on motor fuel. One is the federal tax, and then there's the state tax, and the state tax varies. So that's what. And by the way, do you have to buy fuel in every state that you travel? Do they require that?
No, I can go clean. I just get fuel when I absolutely need it, and I can go about 1,200 miles on a tank full.
Okay, and do you use gasbuddy.com, GASBUDDY.com, to look for the lowest price fuel as you travel?
Me personally, no, I don't. My wife used to, but for our car, we're kind of loyal to like one or two gas stations, and depending on where we go shopping, on if we get a coupon for a discount for fuel for gas.
Yeah, we used to be loyal when we did a lot of traveling between Missouri and Virginia. When we were moving here, we would pull a trailer with our Dodge Cummins turbo diesel, and we were loyal to Flying J until they became unloyal to us. And I've noticed that Flying J raised their prices. They are higher than the little gas stations that sell diesel right near them. They might be 20, 30 cents more per gallon, which is unacceptable. They have higher volume. They have they can spread their cost over more gallons than the little guy, and yet they are ripping their customers off. And their customers would be guys like you that find it difficult to go to a small station where, you know, the top of your tractor trailer might crash into the overhead, what would you call it, sunshade roof of some of these outdoor gas station pumps, right?
Well,
need to be extra high.
Well, here is another bonus tidbit of information for everybody. Pilot Flying J, they are one company, and they're both owned by Warren Buffett.
Tells me everything I need to know. I don't shop there. It used to be that they would compete. It used to be that if you went to a truck stop exit on the interstate, there would be Pilot on one side of the access road and Flying J on the other, and they would compete with each other. And then now that they're owned by the same corporation, they've decided absolutely no need to compete. Let's just raise prices across the board. And that's what they've done. It's horrible. Well, and not only that, they've all joined in. And the other guys, they're competitors like Truck Stop America, right? They've raised their prices too. All the truck stops have raised their prices about 20 cents. In our neck of the woods, at least 20 to 30 cents per gallon higher than the immediate neighbors that they have that are selling the same products. Jay, do you have anything else you want to share with us?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Okay. Stay with us, and you'll be on with Rich Scheben right after we come back from these few short commercial announcements. Kyle jumped in the engineer's seat at GCN, and he and I were talking during the break about battery desulfators. And I wanted to ask truck driver Jay about that battery desulfator. So, class, what they are, it's a little device that has two wires, two alligator clips, plus and minus, and you just hook it up to your battery. And what it does is if you have a 12-volt car or light truck battery, or even a truck like truck driver Jay's driving, it will pulsate. It will take the battery's electricity, it'll charge a capacitor, and then blast at about 60 volts, 65 volts, the battery, like pulse, pulse, pulse. And these short blasts will remove the sulfate from the lead plates on the lead acid batteries, and it'll fall to the bottom in a reservoir that's designed to catch this debris inside the battery. So there's no fuss, no muss. You just hook it up, and it takes about 1 day per pound of battery weight to rejuvenate the batteries. And I was telling Kyle that we have, between the cars and the trucks and the bulldozer and the tractors and all that stuff, we have about 30 batteries here. And at a typical life expectancy of 3 years for a battery, we would be replacing 10 batteries a year at $100 a piece. That's $1,000 worth of batteries. So instead, I bought these desulfators for about $30, and we've got them running on, they don't sit idle. They're always blasting away on some car, truck, or farm equipment battery to rejuvenate it. And I was wondering, truck driver Jay, have you ever used them?
That's the first time I've heard about that. So that's something that's fascinating to me. Okay,
here's how it goes. Literally, in your case, what you would do is get one of these. You'd want one that's a little better than a home version. And if you look them up on the internet, they're blue, and they look like the size of a deck of cards. They have two wires, two alligator-type clips on the end, and all you do is clip it onto your 12-volt battery. Now, in your case, you're running all the time, so you just stick that in an area where the acid fumes would not destroy it, and you'd run it all the time, and it would continuously desulfate your batteries. And so you're looking at what, $100 $150 or $200. No, you're probably looking at more than that. About $200 per battery, right? And you've got, what, a couple of them?
I have 4 batteries.
You have 4 of them. And are they $200 a piece?
Tell you the truth, I have no idea. I just got into a new truck, and I know this one has 4 truck batteries, and they're supposed to last at least a couple of years.
Yeah, a couple of years, 4 truck batteries. So, lead, we stopped mining lead in the United States, and so lead has become more precious, and battery prices have jumped. Well, and you've got one that takes 2 people to lift. It's got 2 handles, one for each guy on each side of the battery. I mean, they're that big. So I would look into it. Battery desulfator, and I think you'll be impressed. And they work.
Yeah.
Okay. So you had a question? You had a question?
Yeah. Well, we were talking about the truck stops. For anybody that wants to know, Flying J, Pilot, they've had paid parking. You can reserve parking. You're going to be going to someplace and you want to stop at a truck stop. You want to make sure that there's a parking spot for you. You can call ahead to Pilot Flying J and reserve a parking spot. And normally they only have, say, maybe a dozen, maybe a little bit more reserved parking spots. And parking can go anywhere from $12 to $15, $16, depending on where you are in the nation. TA Petro, they are also one company. And they have now started extorting truck drivers, and they've made probably 70% of their parking paid reserve parking. And that goes anywhere, like I said, between $12 and $16, $18, depending on where you are in the country. Love's is one of the very few truck stops does not charge at all for parking.
Well, I can tell you that when I was pulling our 20-foot, 8x8 by 20-foot trailer, moving equipment or pulling a 26-foot gooseneck trailer, with farm equipment from Virginia, I would pull into, and this is, maybe 13 years ago, 12 years ago, I would pull into a Flying J or a Love's or a Petro. It was absolutely free. I just pull in there. And I could get some shut-eye for like 6 hours and then fire up, because it didn't make any sense to me to go into a motel when I could just put the seat back, sleep in the truck, get a cup of coffee, get some, eat one of the sandwiches that I brought with me, and then continue on my way. So, wow. Yeah, just one more way. I mean, I guess they're trying to keep up with the banksters and charge every little line item that they can possibly think of. And so I went to, the last time I went to Flying J, I got a cup of coffee and I had a travel mug with me. And I went to pay for it, and the guy said it was like $1.79. And I said, wait a minute, that's like 12 ounces, 10 ounces. He says, yeah, it's one price, no matter how big. And I said, this is like 10 or 12 ounces. And I said, it used to be that it was maybe 50 or 75 cents if you had your own cup. I said, it'd be less expensive if I used your cup. And he said, well, it's one price. And I said, can I talk to the manager? And it was the manager. I said, well, you told me everything I need to know. I'm never coming back. Why would I come back here? That was Flying J. That was the last time I went to Flying J. So they're taking advantage of everybody in there who stops by. The difference between them and Jesse James is the gun. That's the difference. Jesse James had a gun. Truck driver J, I got to go.
I have another question about a different subject, though.
Okay, go quickly.
Okay, now I've been listening online. I have used data, but you had spoke the other day about generators, and I wanted, because you were asking what to look for, and how to run it and everything. Can you go over that? That was one of the reasons I was calling.
Okay, well, I'll do another broadcast. I won't do it today, but I'll talk about generators. I'll talk about the fuels. I'll talk about the service. I'll talk about the life expectancy of generators. So I'll help you. I'll do another broadcast. Give me about a week or so, and we'll talk about.
Okay.
I'll ask Kurt Wilson to join me because he likes to talk about that kind of thing. We'll talk about whether to consider propane, unleaded gasoline, diesel, the RPMs of the engine versus gasoline versus diesel. We'll talk about the fuel cost, which is the least expensive to operate in the long run, which is the least expensive to purchase initially, and whether you should consider converting a gasoline-powered generator to propane. And you can do that for $200. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll talk about how long they would last based on the type they are. And it's quite shocking what we'll talk about. But yeah, I'll be glad to help those who are interested in generators with that information. But Truck Driver Jay, I appreciate the call.
Thanks, Vince.
Thanks. There he goes, Truck Driver Jay. Okay, Rich Scheben. Where would you like to go from here? Want to talk about cashless restaurants?
Well, first talking about the narrative that we were discussing, the aristocracy managing the serfs, just 2 articles just today. More retailers are going bankrupt than ever. And GM is laying off 1,500 Americans, while workers in Mexico from a similar plant remains unaffected. And, as we always talk about, or I always mention, the little guy, the bottom 93%, has no representation in America. And I'm reading a lot more articles these days about quote-unquote class envy, which is just group identity politics, just a different group. And I want to make it perfectly clear it has nothing to do with class envy. It has everything to do with corruption and manipulation and deception and nepotism and things of that nature. And I'll just give a few examples, but look at quantitative easing. 95% of that money goes to the top 1 to 7%. So this is just like too big to fail, too big to jail, all the bailouts, all the QEs that weren't even mentioned as QEs, all the money printing. It all goes to the super wealthy. It doesn't go to the little guy. That's one of the reasons why I talk about QE for the people. Breaking up the big companies, negative interest rates, means testing, and I can go into a lot more specificity and detail. 100-year mortgages, give money, the average household debt to the people, dismantle essential banks, all the things that I talk about, especially practice what you preach laws. But even though I've been saying these things, which I've been told are very good ideas, even from congressmen, it doesn't get to the floor of the mainstream media because the aristocracy wants to manage the serfs. And this is why us little guys have to stick together, because the mainstream media is going to throw out all these politically correct buzzwords like equality and fairness and prosperity and inclusiveness, humanity and democracy, but they don't mean any of it. All it is words that have been hijacked by definition to use against us. And we'll talk more about that after the break then.
Yeah, Rich Scheben's with us, offgridmontana.com. And if we have time, Rich, I'd like to talk about one-sentence bills. One-sentence bills that would be nice if they worked. Rich Scheben's with us. Rich, please continue.
Well, I think when the powers that be and the mainstream media throws out all these narratives like class envy, we need to make sure that they get called on the fact that this is more group identity politics. And as you've heard me say many times, group identity politics is just as important to the demise of America as the corrupt monetary policies from central banks, Keynesian economics, and of course the demographic situation that we're in. And when you have group identity politics, what it basically does is changes the rules, laws, and accountability, and it's a divide and conquer strategy. And when you do a divide and conquer strategy, you lower the bars of standards and expectations, which destroys America from within because you reward mediocrity. And then you get a country that's suffering from diminishing returns, and certain criteria like ingenuity, productivity, innovation, knowledge, opportunity is all out the door except for the few elite at the very top. Now, there's so many things that doesn't get discussed in detail. In the last week, what's been getting a little bit of publicity is the LIBOR, which is the London Interbank Offered Rate. Now, they say they basically use disclaimers and say, well, by 2021 it'll be abolished, and that may be the case. And it's basically a reference rate, but it's so fixed and phony, and so many books are cooked. In the last since 2015, it's gone up over 2%. In the last 6 months, it's gone almost a full percentage point. And it includes like close to $400 trillion of loans and derivatives. It includes credit cards, auto loans, and much more is priced off of the LIBOR. So basically what it means is the cost of doing business is getting more expensive, and that's why I mentioned how retailers are going bankrupt. And bankruptcy and defaults, all these words are going to be common terms that we're going to be hearing in the very near future. So the cost of borrowing money to buy back shares of stock is going to get higher. And I cannot discuss this fraud. And I should be talking about this 2 hours every week, because this is the fleecing of the American people by the American corporations, where big government, the mainstream media, and the court system is basically helping them feather their own nest with share buybacks, dividends, executive cash through stock options, and, of course, mergers and acquisitions. Now, if you look at March data, it's a record dividend cuts because the economy is not doing well. So they continue to buy back shares of stock, and that's the only reason the stock market is up. When you look at debt, when you look at the credit collapsing, when you look at every barometer that shows the health of our economy, nothing makes sense anymore. And because the powers that be, the aristocracy, the fascist system we have, where big government and big corporate oligarchies protect each other with the help of, like I mentioned earlier, mainstream media and the court system. And that's why I often blame lawyers, judges, bankers, and politicians, because they're all in bed together. So we need to talk about this in more detail, because the high yield, the junk bonds, I mean, they're not going to be able to pay these bonds. You're going to hear default. It's going to be flashing like a disco ball. Margin debt is an all-time high. This is going to cause more forced sales of assets or collateral, and this is going to help trigger a bigger collapse. So when you have less products, because the corporations, instead of putting money, now they've gotten a big tax break from 35% to 21%, the corporations of America. And powers that be are saying, well, all this money is coming back to America. Well, that's great if it's coming back to America for research and development and employees and new jobs and products and services, but it's not. It's going into things like share buybacks along with the central banks, and not just the Fed, our Fed, but the Bank of England, the Bank of Japan, the ECB, and even Switzerland National Bank. They're all in cahoots, buying each other's stocks and bonds. It's all fake and phony. And after the break, Vince, I'd like to go into a little more detail to put the exclamation point on that, please.
That sounds great. And we'll talk more about the fleecing of America when we come back. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, hour number 2 of USA Prepares. We're delighted you're with us. Rich Scheben's here. Hey, Rich, I just ran outside, and I've got windows on the farm here. I've moved the studio to our dining room, and I can see the driveway. I can see who's coming, and just as we went into the break, FedEx showed up, and my purchase of diesel engine motor oil just arrived. 3 really heavy boxes, and the guy I ordered it yesterday. The guy said, "Wow, these are heavy." Yeah. And he said, what's happening is Walmart has, he lives in another town, new driver for us. He said that that in his town they have a Walmart, and people are finding that they can buy the products for less online at Walmart than they can in the Walmart store. And so what some people are doing, and we've reported this previously, that what some people are doing is since they have a smartphone anyway, they go into Walmart and they look at, the items and they go, I wonder how much it is online at Walmart. And they bring it up on their phone and they go, wow, it's less expensive and it's in stock at this store. So what they do is they order it on their phone as they walk down the aisle, push the cart. They're looking at the item on the shelf. They find out it's less expensive in the same store in stock if they order it online, and it's available for immediate pickup. So they order it from their phone while they're looking at it right in front of them, and then they pay for it, and then they go in the back and pick it up for less money. That's what's going on.
Absolutely. In fact, you can expand on that. Brick and mortar is going down. That's one of the reasons I talked about retailers that are going bankrupt. Defaults and bankruptcies are going to be common, everyday words in America, and this is why I talk about Economic 101. How can you afford to have a brick-and-mortar store with have employees where some employee, slips, or some employee says a joke in the hallway and somebody who has victim group status or protectionist group status calls human resources and the lawyers come out of the woodwork? How can you do business in America anymore? You cannot. This is what group identity politics has done. It's manufactured perception. Pity, guilt, and ideology has destroyed America. This is why when somebody is a hyphenated American and they talk about what skin pigmentation, gender, sex, sexual orientation, religion, ideology, it doesn't matter. You have to, pardon my expression, flip the middle finger at these people. This whole ideology has destroyed America. Now, if you don't mind, Vince, I want to put the exclamation point on what I was saying before the break.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Now, when you talk, when all these big corporations, whether it be their central banks who are buying, and not just the Fed, again, all the central banks that we're in cahoots with, the exchange rate manipulators, which is the Fed, the ECB, the DOJ, England, and you can throw Switzerland in there as well. Okay, everything is fake and phony. There's no free markets. There's no supply and demand. It's the manufacturing of the aristocracy to keep the status quo in order to manage the serfs. That's what it is. So when I was talking about all this fake and phony economy that Trump inherited, okay, he inherited this. This is why you heard me say, folks, he inherited sabotage and demolition. Okay, the left-right paradigm is maybe 5% of the whole thing. It's the aristocracy managing the serfs. The economic headwinds with demographics and debt and credit and pensions and government promises and valuations, everything is fake and phony. And they're still talking GDP every day. How do you use this as a credible unit of measure when it, depending on what author you read, anywhere between $3 to $6 of debt has to be increased to have $1 of GDP? How can people even? I mean, do they think the American people are that stupid? And I talk economics 101, folks. So going back to the corporations, where they take, whether it be central banks or the benefits they're getting from a 35% tax rate to a 21%, there should have been stipulations on it to hire new employees, to have R&D, to have new products, to have new services. But no, all that money goes to stock buybacks, share buybacks, dividends, and of course, like I mentioned earlier, this month of March, record low dividends because everybody's broke. And of course, executive cash in the form of stock options and mergers and acquisitions. What that does is consolidation. Less employees, more robotics, automation, artificial intelligence. That's what all this means. And that's why I talked about the LIBOR. Because the cost of borrowing money to buy back shares of stocks is going higher. Today, our stock market is 140% of GDP. And here, see, they use GDP for everything. Most overvalued market in the world right now is what we are here in the U.S. Now, pardon me, we're usually around 45% of GDP, but our stocks are now 140%. So I'm looking at two articles right here that says a lot. On Zero Hedge, if any of you are by your computer here in America, Goldman gives up early gains as CFO sees no buybacks in quarter two. So you should see it went up, and all of a sudden it went straight down like gravity. The next article right after that, the party is ending. IMF warns the coming risks are clearly to the downside. Lagarde from the IMF warned that a 1% increase or 100 basis points over a year ago would knock out 20% of the companies out of the S&P and the Dow. Okay, well, you just look at the Russell 2000. I remember reading not too long ago that 20% are zombie companies. Basically, what that means is these companies can't even afford to pay their interest on their debt. Now, you dovetail it with all the other things I talk about, you know, the bailouts, the QEs, too big to fail, too big jails. You take out oil, our trade deficits are getting larger. Our budget deficit is, you almost can't even pronounce it, and yet we've lost 3 million jobs to China. Now, people say, well, how come we can't compete with China? Well, how do you compete with a company that doesn't care about trademarks, copyrights, or intellectual property rights? I mean, it's almost impossible. So all these great corporate tax cuts that you've seen that are going towards so-called quote-unquote profits is all fake and phony. It's all false. This is why we talk about self-sufficiency. This is why, like Vince mentioned earlier about a battery desulfator, which, we could always continue that conversation. Vince, I wonder how good or functional or efficacious it is for deep cycle batteries, because you were using the example of car batteries, which are short cycle batteries. But this is why we do this, people. Economics 101 absolutely needs to be learned by everybody, because anything that becomes the next plan of action, whether it be a IMF-monitored SDR, special drawing rights, whether it be socialism, communism, fascism, dictatorships, any type of authoritarian regime, is going to be top-down, centralized control with no accountability from the governing body. You can kiss freedom and liberty goodbye, because you, and especially your kids and grandkids, will be told what to do, what to say, how to think, and how to do it. That's where we're going. Economics 101, and this is why I try so hard to intermingle economics, financial, economic, social, and political issues, and using that rationale, because it's so important. Basically, the bottom 93%, approximately, is being duped. You're being used. And especially if you think you're a hyphenated American, you're absolutely being used, because we're all in it together. That's nothing. This is why the mainstream media always talks about race, gender, sex, sexual orientation, religion, because their job is to sway the public opinion. Their job is to hold on to the narrative, the memes, the talking points, the themes, the microphone. They don't want you to think. They want to groom you and cultivate you to be the divided groups of America and not the United States of America. And this is why I try to be repetitive and it's not redundant on standing for principle. 3 criteria. The same rules, laws, and accountability. 2, truth. 3, if someone does it with less consequences because of what their gender or skin pigmentation or sexual orientation or whatever is, then you do it too, because they're going after free speech. Once they get free speech, forget about the Bill of Rights and Constitution. It's all going to follow. It's the aristocracy.
Rich, you said something very interesting. If they do it, you do it too. Well, that's the way it used to be in elementary school when I was in elementary school. Well, he did it. So, isn't that what we used to say?
Well,
he did it. Why can't I do it?
It sounds simplistic, but why should somebody have special rules, laws, and accountability based on how much money they have, or what race they are, or what gender they are, or what sex or sexual orientation or religion? This is the divide and conquer strategy. But as I always mention, that the mainstream media doesn't. When you lower the bars of standards and expectations for getting a job, you are destroying America from within. You can't reward mediocrity for decade after decade after decade after decade and expect there not to be a law of diminishing returns with opportunity, knowledge, ingenuity, productivity, innovation, and everything else that made us great, being almost worthless or inaccessible unless you're part of that aristocracy. And that's exactly what's happening, Vince.
So I think what you're saying, Rich Scheben, is so we hire people and they say, hey, we're low on this particular color, so let's get some of those. We bring them in, then we sit them down, and we say, okay, do the job, and they go, I don't know what I'm doing. So the job doesn't get done. That's what you're talking about. Yeah. And let's say they're innovators.
On hard work, effort, proven results, and qualifications, we're done.
Yeah. When we come back, I'd like to talk about the fleecing of the American people. So, Rich, I'd like to address one of your comments about the fleecing of America. I have firsthand experience about this. So, a couple of years ago, I went to a meeting, and this was one of those restaurant meetings where two people from the state of Missouri were giving a presentation or would answer questions. One of them was the guy who was in charge of reading all the bills that the alleged representatives wrote for constitutionality. So this guy's department, he was in charge of this department. And they would read all of these bills, these multi-page bills, to see if they were constitutional and could then proceed in the process to ultimately be voted on and possibly become law. Well, he was there, and there was a large group in attendance, waiting to hear these guys. It was in Springfield, Missouri. The second guy was the alleged representative. They were waiting for him, and so the first guy was talking about how bills become law, and I asked a question. I said, so how about one-sentence bills? He said, it'll never happen. It's too simple. It'll never happen. And he wouldn't elaborate on why it would never happen. But he said, it's not going to happen, so don't even discuss it. We're not going to have one-sentence bills in Missouri. Then a half hour after he started, the alleged representative walked in. I stood up and I said, hey, you're late. You're holding us all up. We've been waiting for you. You're late. So I showed him the level of respect that he showed the rest of the group, who was all, let's say there were 100 people there waiting for this guy. And so he turned a little bit red, and it kind of fluffed it off like he was kind of an arrogant guy. All right. So I then went on to ask the first guy, who was in charge of the department that read all the bills for constitutionality. I said, so how many people are in your department? He said 35. I said, okay. How much do they make on average? These are questions they don't like to answer, right? About $35,000 each. So I'll tell you what. We're going to let you keep your job. And then we're going to fire all of your staff, all 35 of them. So you're going to be the only guy left. And he was talking about the backlog. He was saying that prior to that, how much backlog they had in reading these bills. And it's a real problem because the representatives want their bills to be read, and they can't read them in time because there's only 35 of them, and they need more people. And so I come up with a suggestion. Not only do you not need more people, you don't need anybody. We're going to fire all of your staff. And it was, what I said was ghastly to him. And I said, so what'll happen when you fire, or when we fire your entire staff, the backlog will just grow. He said, that's right. And I said, and then what you're going to tell your alleged representatives is that the bills are so complicated that you can't read them in a timely manner. So when they get them down to one sentence, you'll be able to read them quickly for constitutionality. And their bills will go through your department much quicker than with the 35 people you already have. That's costing us 35 people times 35,000 plus benefits, plus overhead. Of course, that didn't go very far. And then he wanted to know what I was talking about in terms of these one-sentence bills. And I said, well, okay, here's an example. And I'm paraphrasing. Every representative will read and understand every bill before voting on it, or they are guilty of failure to perform their duties, which is punishable by not less than 10 years in prison. So this nonsense about, well, we've got to vote on it before we can read it, the Nancy Pelosi nonsense, that would stop, because we would put these guys in jail. we'd say, well, tell me about what was in this bill that you liked or disliked. And they, well, I didn't read it. Oh, okay. You're going immediately to jail. That's what we need to do. We need to imprison these alleged representatives who are taking our money and benefits and perks and bribes and not doing what we hired them to do. We need to imprison them. I'd love to hear your comments when we come back. Rich Scheben and I will be right back. OffGridMontana.com. Rich, do you have any comments about what I said about the fleecing of the American people?
Oh, absolutely. I could talk about this. We can do a whole show on that. But, we talk about
do you agree?
line item veto, but we need to have line item bills. You and I, we've discussed this on the air before. We've talked about it privately. That's what needs to happen. I went to a Republican meeting here in the little town I live in, and Greg Gianforte was here, and I mentioned that to him. And actually, I'll give him a feather in the cap. He did not vote for the omnibus spending bill because it had too much crap in it. And how are we supposed to build the wall? How are we supposed to get jobs for the people? Printing money doesn't do it for the bottom 93%. It's having a savings account and being debt-free. And I'm blue in the face by saying that, but it needs to be said. I'm not trying to be condescending to the listeners because most people need to hear something 3 to 10 times to remember something or read something 3 to 10 times. I'm one of them because I call myself an average Joe, non-hyphenated American, as everybody knows. So going back to your question, I don't think anybody in Congress read the omnibus bill, not 100%. I really doubt they did. And this is why we need to create our own venues and platforms for, by, and of the people. So the fleecing of America, when you look at the huge bonuses, especially the companies that were too big to fail and too big to jail, that us taxpayers paid for, and yet they still give themselves huge bonuses. Wall Street, the big banks, the whole works. Auto manufacturers, it doesn't matter. And then they have the audacity to make everything look good on paper, like I've mentioned many times before. Even though they're eliminating their core business model, they say they have great credit rating, which they don't. So they issue bonds to sell debt and bundle them up into bad, toxic assets with, of course, AAA government bonds. And they sell this stuff, mostly junk status, because they're desperate and chasing yields, especially for public pension funds. And, of course, they have a disclosure about all earnings being adjusted. The SEC protects the fraudsters, not the people. The FDA and the AMA is a great example or analogy that they're owned by Big Pharma. Everything and everybody in the hierarchy is bought and paid for. People, do you trust anything the FBI says, the CIA, the NSA, the DOJ, our own Department of Justice? Do you believe anything that they say? How many times, just regarding Syria, have you heard this guy says, I'm pretty sure there was no false flag. They really had chemical weapons go off, but I'm not sure if it was chlorine or sarin gas or ammonia or this or that. They don't know anything. And even if they did, no one believes them. The mainstream media has a believability rate of 6%. Turn on NBC or CNN or ABC or CBS and go from channel to channel. I haven't had television for over 11 years living off-grid. And I'm really glad because I remember when you go from channel to channel to channel, it's the same thing. It's the same talking points. It's almost verbatim. These people are paid to literally read off of teleprompters. I'll tell you, Vince, I don't know if we're ever going to get out of this, but the only way we're going to is if we read up, we speak up, and we stand up. And this is why we need some heroes in Congress, especially you new people who are trying to get elected. We need to institute practice what you preach laws. We need to have those 3 criteria I talk about regarding standing for principle. We need to have QE for the people. We need these things. And I'm not just doing this I don't care. Take the recognition. Don't mention me. I don't give a crap. I don't care. Can't we have somebody sticking up for the frickin' people for a change? You know, I talk about a lot of things in the economic realm, especially stagflation. You know, people say, well, how come it's not inflation? Look at food, water, health care, college, insurance, lumber, taxes, housing, stocks, rent, transportation. There's a lot of things that are going up. It's because it's manufactured that way, because of subsidies, money printing, special interest, lobbying, tax, grants. I mean, we're living in la-la land. I mean, look at, in the last budget, $700,000 went to somebody to interpret what Neil Armstrong said on the moon. Crap! How come I can't get $700,000 from Congress to bring back disco?
Hold on.
I mean, this is how stupid
Rich
things
Scheben,
sound.
it would take way more than $700,000 to figure out what Neil Armstrong said on the moon, because we never went to the moon.
That's very possible. We're living in a manufactured perception reality, because the people, everything needs to start coming from the bottom up, folks. The top down is corrupt. They're bought and paid for. They didn't even earn most of it. Corruption, manipulation, deception, and nepotism has taken over hard work, effort, proven results, and qualifications. The stock market is about as fake and phony as you get, and that's why I talk about the fleecing of America. That's why I talk about share stock buybacks, dividends, executive cash in the form of stock options, mergers and acquisitions, everything. Look at high-yield junk bonds. Look at the default. Look at the bankruptcies. I tried to meld in all, this economic data as much as possible. It's all fake and phony. Nothing is real. So that being said, Vince, I think I might be out of breath, but you let me know what you told me you wanted.
I've got some comments.
Please.
You're talking about inflation. Well, I just got our latest electric bill. They raised the rates again. Now, here's what they're doing. They are charging us to tell us how much they're going to charge us. They're charging us to tell us how much they're going to charge us. They're going to charge us now $27 a month to have an electric meter. That's if you multiply 12 months times $27, the result is $324. You're paying, if you live in our neck of the woods, you're going to pay $324 before you use your first watt of electricity. It just keeps going up. Now, these are the same guys that said, we're going to help you. We're going to put smart meters in. These are going to be more efficient. We're going to save all the cost of those meter readers. When the meter readers were reading the meters, it was less than $20. It's like $18, I think. $18 last time we had meter readers, which was it wasn't too long ago, a couple of years ago. They fired all the meter readers, and then they raised the rate to have a meter, to pay for all these smart meters. It's $324 rent per year for the meter that you didn't need, a smart meter. You could have used that analog meter, which lasts 3 or 4 times longer. And we used to employ people, and those meter readers would travel up and down the highways and byways, and they'd look up and down and left and right, and they'd say, "Whoa! There's a tree limb. It looks like it's going to fall on that power line. I better call this in so we can trim that before it causes damage." No, not now. Now we have these electronic smart meters that don't do that. I want to just share with you a quick thought. Venezuela. If you want to know what pure pain is going to look like, Venezuela. Now, the monthly minimum wage in Venezuela is in bolivars. And I'm going to I've done the arithmetic to make it real easy for radio. So it's 1.8 million bolivars per month, which is $5.21 US. So the minimum wage for a person working in Venezuela right now is $5.21. So if that person wants to buy a quart of vegetable oil, well, I'm talking about the cooking oil that'll make you sick. If you want to buy that, it's going to take a third of a month's wages to get a quart of vegetable oil. If you really want to splurge and you want to get 2 pounds of cheese, it's going to take a month and a quarter wages. A month and a quarter to get 2 pounds of cheese. You can see that you're not going to be able to survive by working in Venezuela, right? Because you can't live 1 month on 2 pounds of cheese. Okay, let's say you want to get some margarine, some stuff that's really bad for you. 2 pounds of margarine, a third of a month wages. Let's say you want to get some ladies' deodorant, a month's wages. A month's wages. Let's say you want to get a 16-ounce bottle of shampoo, a little over a month's wages. Let's say you want to see where you're going, and you want an energy-saving light bulb, a half a month's wages for a light bulb. Now, let's say you're really moving on up, like the Jeffersons. Moving on up, and you want one of those refrigerators. Over 30 months' wages. 30 months' wages to buy a refrigerator. 30 months. We're talking more than 2 years to save up to buy a refrigerator. And that's if you could buy it today. But, with inflation, it'd probably be more than that by the time you saved up for 30 months. I just wanted to share that with you. Kyle in Montana, welcome. You're on with Rich Scheben and me.
Good morning, Rich. And
Good morning, Kyle.
Good morning. Hi, and Vince, how are you doing? Vince, I've been thinking about this stuff a long time, and you and I both have talked about this, and Rich and I have talked about this. But, folks, the reality is this deep state is like the huge 6,000-pound elephant, and we and Donald Trump and Congress and all of those guys are like the little tiny villagers that are out there in front of this thing getting mowed down by it. And in my opinion, folks, this is my opinion, this ends in one of three ways. We either end up in a world war, a civil war, or a financial collapse, any one of which is going to destroy everything that we think we have right now. You better get ready for that thought, or you better do like Vince has said and hit the breaker for the weekend and take stock of what you've got. I'll hold this break.
Yeah, hold that thought. Hold that thought, Kyle. We're going into a break. Kyle's joined us, a USA Preparers instructor living in Montana, along with Rich Scheben, living in Montana. I'm in Missouri. We'll be right back. Rich Scheben's with us in Montana, offgridmontana.com. Kyle's with us in Montana. Kyle, what other thoughts do you have? You talked about three ways you see this culminating. One is world war, civil war would be number two. Financial collapse is number three. I don't disagree.
Yeah, and the other thing to think about, folks, is you want to know what, once they get your guns, what life would look like? Take a look at what the Palestinians are throwing at the Israelis right now. Burning tires, rocks. Imagine and they're just getting, they could just get mowed down. You want to know what it's going to look like once they get your guns? Take a look at what a police raid looks like in Japan. You want to understand, all right, the next thing to think about is you've got neighbors. Everybody's got neighbors within a few miles of them. Imagine if just 10 of them turned out to be our starving, hungry, rabid, crazy people after about 4 or 5 weeks without food and water. Just imagine what that's going to look like for you and your family. You better think. You better consider this because it's coming.
You can't even think about your neighbors. Think about if they're mercenaries or brown shirts or black shirts, and they got into this country easily, which they have. And think about the fact that what if the people lose confidence in fiat currencies? What if Japan and China, who are our biggest debt holders, start selling treasuries? What if all that money starts coming back all at one time? I mean, there's so many scenarios that could collapse every valuation. People don't even know what money is going to be in the future because they don't. Is it going to be silver, gold? Is it going to be cash? Is it going to be some type of SDR, electronic money? Everything is so corrupt that people don't even know where to think, and that's why there's so much despair, right?
Yep, I agree, and I think we should be putting our money into things that are going to have value. If you don't have electricity and you have a handsaw, I guarantee you that right there is going to be worth its weight in gold. That's just one little tiny thing. But people better have hand tools or a way to charge their systems up, spare parts. There's so many things that needs to be done. And I just, people are just they're so apathetic because we've had it so easy for so long, Vince and Rich, that, I just don't know if there's any getting through to them. And, my dad was in Korea, and he had a saying after watching so many Marines get killed, these green recruits and stuff that was there. And he said, Americans wake up after their guts are out. And I'm afraid that is where we're headed. But, with that cheery note, I will hope you guys have a great day.
Thanks, Kyle.
You bet.
Yeah. Kyle, thank you so much.
Well, Vince,
Yeah,
I talked about this till I'm blue in the face. Practice what you preach, laws, QE for the people. 3 criteria for standing for principle. If we did those things, and I'm not trying to get recognition, I'm not trying to brag, don't you feel that if we implemented those, we could change America immediately for the better?
Yeah, absolutely. And we need to say no. Here's an interesting thing. So our county decided to tax us on equipment, things like that, and they want me to fill out this form. And so every year they tax us on things that we own. Can you imagine that? You work for it, you're taxed on your wages, you go buy it, you pay sales tax on it, and then you register it and you pay license plate taxes, right? And then they want you to pay personal property tax on the thing that you already paid tax on to buy, to earn the money to buy it, the sales tax when you bought it, the license plates to keep it, and then they wanted 4 taxes on an automobile or a truck. Okay? Well, they sent me this thing, and it's like 8.5 by 11, and I reduced it, and I faxed it to them on 8.5 by 14, their form. I reduced it and faxed it to them, and that was good, except they can't use it that way. They have to have it on their form so they can scan it in. So they wanted a signed copy, so we sent them a copy of the copy, 8.5 by 11, but that's not good because it needs to be 8.5 by 14 for them. So they sent me another blank form to fill out. Can you imagine that? These guys are out of control. Out of control. They don't stop. More and more information. We need to throw overboard these alleged representatives who are doing this to us. We need to get them out of office. Put somebody in that will do the honest thing. Rich Scheben, thanks so much for being with us. Class above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.